It began, as all revolutions in science do, not with a blinding explosion, but with a whisper, an anomaly so quiet, so mathematically precise, that it almost slipped through unnoticed. Yet those who did notice would soon come to understand that this was no ordinary whisper from the stars. It was a voice, a signal, a pulse so deliberate and pure that it could not be mistaken for the random hum of the cosmos. The story you are about to hear is not speculation, not myth, but a record of what happens when the universe decides to speak, and humanity finally hears it. Tonight we turn our eyes to the traveler that has captivated, terrified, and redefined the very limits of what we thought possible. 3 Ailas, a visitor from outside our solar system, an object that has drifted through the cold, airless dark for what could be billions of years, untouched and unseen until now. We believed it was inert, a silent wanderer, one more frozen relic of a forgotten star system. But something changed. Something ancient woke up. At first, the instruments registered nothing unusual, just a faint glimmer against the black, the slow parabolic drift of an interstellar body caught in our sun's distant gravitational whisper. But then came the noise, subtle at first, faint enough to be dismissed as cosmic interference, yet within hours that static resolved into structure. Order. Patterns too elegant to be random. The world's most powerful telescopes pivoted toward the anomaly. The Hubble, the James Webb, the arrays of ALMA in the Atacama Desert, all locked onto one object, one impossible source that was doing what no natural object should ever do. It was sending a message. What kind of message could travel across interstellar gulfs, through the vacuum and the noise of eternity, to reach us now? Could it be an echo from the dawn of time, a remnant of a civilization long extinct, or something far more immediate, something aware? The data told one story, and one story only. This was not random. The signal was repeating, coherent, intentional. For decades, astronomers have dreamed of this moment, the first undeniable sign that we are not alone. But dreams can quickly curdle into dread, because when a message comes from something we cannot see, cannot predict, and cannot understand, the line between discovery and fear begins to blur. We are not just observers anymore. We are participants in a dialogue that began long before our species learned to look up. Imagine standing on a quiet shore and hearing a distant foghorn, low and haunting, calling out from beyond the horizon. You do not know who or what made it. You only know that something immense is out there, moving toward you. That is what astronomers felt as they watched the data unfold. The pulse, steady as a heartbeat, rhythmic, calm, and impossibly precise. The signal was not fading. It was growing stronger. It was aligning itself with Earth. No one could explain it. Every model failed. Every theory bent under its weight. The whispers of the unknown turned into a single, unavoidable truth. 3 Elas was not behaving like a rock. It was behaving like a mind. And as the signal intensified, as the world's greatest observatories fell silent in disbelief, one question began to echo through every lab, every control room, every restless dream of those who dared to watch. What happens when the universe finally answers back? When the first fragments of data arrived from the Hubble Space Telescope, it seemed at first like a curiosity, a statistical anomaly, perhaps a calibration error. But within hours, that illusion dissolved. The spectral readings of 3 Ailas were unlike anything recorded in the history of astronomy. The wavelengths formed a pattern, a rhythm so deliberate that it seemed almost musical, a pulse emerging from the void with mathematical precision. It was centered at exactly 1.42 gigahertz, the hydrogen line, the most sacred coordinate in the electromagnetic spectrum, the cosmic signature of communication. For generations, the scientists of SETI had listened to that frequency, convinced that any intelligent civilization would know it as the universal channel of life itself. Now, At last, something was transmitting on it, and it was coming from within our own solar system. The confirmation came not from one telescope, but from many. Within 48 hours, every major observatory pointed toward the coordinates of 3 islas. ALMA in Chile, FAST in China, the Deep Space Network in Australia, and the aging but still peerless Arecibo Substitute Array in Puerto Rico all captured the same pulse, a steady, unwavering beat, each interval separated by exactly 7 seconds. It was as if a metronome had been built into the heart of the cosmos. No known natural process, no cometary jet, no rotation pattern, no magnetic resonance could account for such precision. The hydrogen line was not simply being emitted, it was being sculpted. At Harvard Center for Astrophysics, Dr. Sarah Chen was the first to map the signal's internal structure. When she filtered the data through a Fourier transform, she discovered layers, harmonics within harmonics, forming a lattice of repeating ratios that matched no astrophysical phenomenon. Instead, they resembled digital modulation, the way human technology encodes information into radio waves. Each pulse contained subpulses arranged in the same mathematical progression that defines the spiral of galaxies, the pattern of hurricanes, the curve of a nautilus shell. The Fibonacci sequence was there, hidden within the noise like a whisper beneath thunder. To Chen, it was a revelation both terrifying and sublime. Nature, in all her elegance, never arranges her signals so perfectly. Someone, or something, was composing this. Within days, the secrecy began. NASA locked the raw telemetry behind firewalls reserved for classified defense data. The European Space Agency issued a temporary data embargo, citing verification protocols. Yet information has its own gravity, and fragments of the truth began to leak. Amateur astronomers with sensitive receivers started to detect the same hydrogen line pulses on their own, and when they triangulated the source, it traced directly to the same point of light. 3 islas. The evidence could no longer be contained. The universe had spoken in full view of humanity. Then came the second event, the moment that transformed astonishment into fear. On the night of October 18th, a coordinated disturbance swept across the radio spectrum of the Northern Hemisphere. Thousands of amateur radio operators reported that their receivers suddenly filled with an ocean of white noise, an overwhelming, structured static that lasted precisely 47 seconds. In isolation, it was a mystery. But when scientists plotted the times and locations of those disturbances on a global map, the data formed a perfect geometric arc stretching across the surface of Earth. That arc, when projected into the heavens, pointed like a laser directly toward 3 islas. Marcus Rodriguez, an independent telecommunications engineer in Colorado, was among the first to record and decode the event. Using high-precision spectral analysis, he peeled away the layers of noise and uncovered a repeating, mathematical code embedded within the static. It was the Fibonacci progression once again. 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, echoing through the radio storm like the heartbeat of order itself. The implications were staggering. For the first time, a signal from beyond our solar system had not merely been received, it had been mirrored in our atmosphere, broadcast simultaneously across half the planet as though Earth itself had been made a relay. Panic rippled through the scientific community. Theories multiplied and collapsed within hours. Could it be solar interference? The Parker Solar Probe reported a quiescent sun, no flares, no coronal ejections. Could the ionosphere have reflected a man-made signal? The geometry made that impossible. Could this be a hoax? No human technology could coordinate such global synchronicity down to the microsecond. Every natural explanation was stripped away until only one remained, one so audacious that most refused to say it aloud. This was intentional. As days passed, the pulse did not fade. It evolved. The pattern shifted, as though responding to our attention. Each new burst contained modifications, slight but deliberate changes that mirrored the adjustments made by our telescopes. When Hubble changed its spectral focus, the emission spectrum from 3 Islas changed in kind, as if the object were aware of being observed. By the time the James Webb Space Telescope turned its golden mirrors toward the coordinates, expectation had turned to dread. The Webb data stunned every analyst who saw it. The object did not behave like any comet or asteroid ever studied. Instead of reflecting sunlight, it devoured it. Across the entire observable spectrum, from infrared through ultraviolet, 3 Illas absorbed nearly all incident radiation. Its albedo was effectively zero, darker than any black hole shadow, darker even than the Bottas void itself. Yet despite its darkness, the object emitted a faint, regular pulse of infrared light, timed exactly with the 7-second radio rhythm. It was as though it were breathing. More shocking still was the thermal data. As 3 Illas drew nearer to the Sun, its temperature fell. According to every known law of thermodynamics, it should have risen exponentially. Instead, the readings dropped below background space temperature. It was growing colder in the presence of heat, a violation so absolute that entire teams of physicists stopped speaking mid-sentence when the numbers appeared. Some whispered of negative energy systems, of exotic matter, of technology that manipulated entropy itself. Others refused to accept it as possible. Yet the evidence was there, immutable and merciless. Then came the image that no one was supposed to see. Hidden deep within Webb's high-resolution data, after countless layers of noise reduction, a pattern emerged on the surface of 3 Illas. Triangular formations arranged in perfect symmetry, each one equidistant, each edge aligned to a common axis. They were not shadows or sensor artifacts. They were real, geometric, and impossibly regular. When light of varying wavelengths struck them, they shifted slightly, as if adjusting, reflecting, or even responding. The object was not inert. It was active. At the European Space Agency, cryptographer Dr. Elena Navarro was brought in to analyze a new transmission picked up by the Deep Space Network in Canberra. The hydrogen line signal had changed. It was now carrying data. Navarro applied a decoding algorithm originally designed for a hypothetical first contact scenario, converting the modulation into binary sequences. After 12 hours of processing, the output formed a three-dimensional grid, a schematic diagram composed entirely of ratios and curves that matched the geometry seen on 3 Islas's surface. It was a design, a blueprint. Engineers who viewed the reconstruction were divided. Some believed it resembled a resonance chamber, a structure meant to amplify and focus energy. Others saw in it the outline of a beacon, an array designed to project or receive something vast beyond comprehension. Whatever it was not natural. And then, without warning, the signal changed once again. The binary transmission flattened into a pure carrier wave, and for exactly 12 minutes, 3 Illas emitted a pulse of infrared light, synchronized with its radio emission. The pulse repeated with mechanical precision, and each time it aligned perfectly with a known irregularity in Earth's magnetic field, the South Atlantic anomaly. This region, long known to cause malfunctions in satellites, lies where the planet's radiation belts dip closest to the surface. To astronomers watching the data in real time, the implication was clear. 3 Illas was not broadcasting randomly into space. It was targeting Earth's weakest magnetic point. Then, at 12 minutes past the hour, the pulse reached its peak. Around the world, satellites flickered. Communication networks collapsed. Air traffic control screens went dark. GPS constellations lost synchronization, and for 7 long minutes, the digital heartbeat of human civilization stopped. No light, no data, no communication, only silence. When power returned, engineers discovered a fragment of data left behind in one surviving relay node. A 3-dimensional map of Earth's magnetosphere, with a single bright point centered over the South Atlantic anomaly, pulsing in rhythm with the vanished signal. In that moment, 3 Elas disappeared from every telescope. It left no debris, no residual radiation, no trace of reflected light. It was simply gone. What remained was a world that had glimpsed, for the briefest instant, the impossible. A visitor that had crossed the gulf between stars to speak in the universal language of mathematics and then withdrawn, leaving behind questions that would haunt science for generations. Within the sealed laboratories of the world's observatories, researchers now whisper theories that strain the boundaries of reason. Perhaps 3 Elas was not a ship, but a key, a catalyst designed to awaken dormant structures hidden within our solar system. Perhaps the signal it broadcast was not a greeting, but an activation, a test of resonance between two worlds. Others suggest something far stranger, that the object was measuring us, analyzing our electromagnetic signature, probing the threshold of our awareness. Whatever the truth, the legacy of those 7 minutes remains etched into the instruments that survived. Even now, faint oscillations continue to ripple through the magnetosphere, subtle deviations repeating every 12 minutes with the precision of a metronome. Somewhere, beyond the veil of silence, the whisper continues, steady, patient, and impossibly ancient. It is not gone. It is waiting. In the aftermath of the event, the world entered a kind of suspended breath. The silence left behind by 3 Elas was not empty. It was saturated, charged with the residue of something immense and incomprehensible. For the scientists who had witnessed it unfold, that silence was louder than any sound. And among them, few carried its weight more heavily than Dr. Sarah Chen, the astrophysicist whose sharp eyes had first detected the impossible hydrogen line signal. For weeks after the disappearance, Chen barely slept. She lived inside the data, replaying the same telemetry again and again, convinced that buried within those final transmissions was a pattern that humanity had yet to understand. Chen's office at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics became a shrine to the event. Walls covered with spectral maps, raw waveform prints, and hastily drawn equations bore silent witness to a mind at the edge of reason. She was not chasing fame or recognition. She was chasing understanding. Each time she analyzed the signal, she found new subharmonics hidden beneath the primary pulse, structures within structures, mathematical lattices repeating in golden ratios, as if the signal itself were an evolving organism, alive within the digital noise. And every discovery brought with it an unsettling realization. This was not just communication, it was adaptation. Whatever intelligence had designed the signal was learning from us, shaping its output in response to our analysis, as though dialogue were taking place on a level we could barely comprehend. The more Chen studied it, the more she became convinced that 3 Elas had not left at all. Its disappearance was not an escape, it was a transition. The last pulse had synchronized with Earth's magnetic field. It had reflected back, just as the emergency transmission from NASA's Deep Space Relay had warned. To Chen, that meant one thing: the object had transferred its presence into another medium. The void it once occupied in space might now exist within the fabric of the planet's own electromagnetic web, folded into the pulse of our magnetic heartbeat. In a private, unpublished paper, she called it the resonant infiltration hypothesis. The idea that 3 Elas was no longer a distant traveler, but a field of influence now integrated into the natural energy of our world. She was not alone in her obsession. Across the ocean, Dr. Amir Hassan and his team at the James Webb Mission Operations Center continued to analyze the faint afterglow where the object had once been. They found residual distortions in the infrared spectrum, soft ripples in the cosmic background radiation that behaved like echoes of a vanished sound. When plotted over time, those ripples formed a pattern eerily similar to the one Dr. Elena Navarro had decoded from the binary transmission. The same spiraling blueprint, the same geometric resonance. But there was a crucial difference. These new patterns were not static. They were moving, expanding outward from the coordinates of 3 elas in perfect spherical symmetry, like the ripples of a stone dropped into a cosmic sea. Navarro herself, haunted by the image of the triangular lattice she had decoded, spent long nights trying to reverse engineer the design. She began to notice something no one else had seen. The triangles were not flat. Each one was subtly curved inward, like a series of nested mirrors focusing toward a single invisible point. To her trained mathematical mind, this was unmistakable. The structure was a resonant amplifier, an architectural machine for manipulating energy through harmonic vibration. The more she modeled it, the more it resembled a vast cosmic instrument capable of tuning the fabric of space-time itself. The implications were staggering. If 3 elas had used such a mechanism to interact with electromagnetic fields, it could explain everything. The hydrogen line coherence, the Fibonacci-encoded pulses, even the inexplicable cooling effect as it neared the sun. It was not defying physics. It was rewriting its parameters locally, bending thermodynamics to its own design. Hassan's team confirmed one more chilling detail. The energy fluctuations recorded in the final moments before the blackout did not vanish into space. They matched precisely the energy signatures now being detected deep within Earth's upper atmosphere. In the following weeks, atmospheric observatories across the globe reported subtle anomalies. Ionization spikes above the South Atlantic, invisible currents pulsing with clockwork precision. The 12-minute rhythm continued, weaker but persistent, echoing through the planet's electromagnetic envelope. It was as if the Earth had inherited the pulse of the visitor, its field now breathing in time with something unseen. The mystery began to extend far beyond astronomy. Geophysicists in Argentina and South Africa observed faint resonances in magnetometer data corresponding exactly to the timing of those pulses. Electrical engineers studying satellite telemetry found traces of synchronization, as though certain systems were unconsciously aligning their frequencies with the anomaly. Even oceanographers detected minor, rhythmic fluctuations in deep-sea magnetic readings, suggesting the influence reached far beneath the surface of the planet. Everywhere, the same silent rhythm continued, steady, patient, inescapable. For the public, the story was long buried under the official explanation of a global magnetic storm. But in hidden corners of academia, a quiet network of researchers formed: astronomers, cryptographers, physicists, and mathematicians who refused to let the mystery die. They shared encrypted data, coded messages, whispered theories. They called themselves the Watchers. To them, the disappearance of 3 elas was not the end of an event. It was the beginning of an observation. Humanity had been noticed. Something had measured us, tested us, perhaps even communicated with us in the only language the universe knows: mathematics and energy. As months passed, the world's magnetic field began to exhibit slow, almost imperceptible variations. The South Atlantic anomaly shifted in shape, expanding eastward toward Africa, as if being pulled by invisible threads. Satellites passing through the region continued to report unexplained malfunctions, brief losses of data, mysterious surges of static, faint repeating tones buried deep within their communication logs. Chen and Navarro, now collaborating in secret, began to believe these were not accidents, but the faint aftershocks of a greater mechanism still at work. Late one night, Chen overlaid the pattern of the new pulses with Earth's orbital path. To her astonishment, the alignments formed a perfect harmonic relationship with the orbits of Jupiter and Saturn. The geometry matched the same ratios found within the Fibonacci signal from 3 elas. It was as if the object's influence had synchronized not only with Earth, but with the entire solar system's magnetic architecture. Navarro proposed an extraordinary theory: that 3 elas had been a kind of seed. a catalyst that, once exposed to the sun's radiation, triggered an ancient network of harmonic resonances spanning the system itself. Perhaps it was not the first. Perhaps others had come before it, each one setting in motion cycles we are only now beginning to perceive. In time, the scientific community would return to cautious normalcy. Conferences resumed, papers were quietly withdrawn, and the world moved on. But those who had seen the data firsthand never forgot. Hassan's team kept detecting faint gravitational ripples, micro-distortions in space-time that oscillated with the same rhythm as the electromagnetic pulses. They were small, almost ghost-like, yet constant, as though some invisible mechanism were maintaining balance, regulating the system from beyond human perception. In her final recorded interview, before disappearing from public life, Dr. Sarah Chen said something that continues to echo in the minds of all who heard it. "We are not observers," she whispered. "We are participants in something much older than our planet, older than our star. We thought we were looking out into the universe, but all along, it was looking back at us. And now, I think it has begun to listen. Even now, in the deepest hours of the night, when the solar winds are quiet and the magnetosphere hums with low electric life, sensitive instruments across the world still detect the faint whisper of a signal beneath the cosmic noise. It is the same frequency, the same delicate hydrogen line that started it all, 1.42 gigahertz. Steady, coherent, and impossibly calm. It drifts like a heartbeat through the darkness, repeating every 12 minutes, marking time in a language beyond translation. Perhaps it is nothing more than an echo of the past, a fading residue of a vanished traveler. Or perhaps it is something far more profound, a steady hand on the cosmic dial, waiting for us to reply. Because if the universe has taught us anything through the enigma of three Elas, it is that silence does not mean absence. Sometimes silence is the sound of the universe thinking. And somewhere out there, or perhaps here among us, the message continues to unfold. Patient, deliberate, eternal, waiting for the moment when we finally learn how to answer.